Hello, welcome to Have Roots Will Travel. My name is Lisa Elvin Steltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. I am currently exploring Les Filles du Roi. I've been doing it for over a year now, taking each one of them individually and exploring their lives and the impact they would have made in New France and to North America. We are now on episode 118, and I do have on my website, haverootswilltravel.com, I have a link for each and every one of those that I did. So have a look at that and see if I've done some of yours. For future, presentations, I have a Facebook page, and I post as soon as I post it on YouTube. I post it on my Facebook group. I'd love for you to subscribe as well to my YouTube channel. That helps me grow. That helps me grow, actually. And also click on that notifications alert, the little bell, so it helps you know when I post new content. With that, let's get started and get to know episode number 118, Our Fille du Roi. Her name was Marie-Marguerite Valade, and she is a viewer request. I do not have her in any of my other folders, so I'm privileged to be able to explore her life and find out who was Marie-Marguerite Valade. So Marie-Marguerite was born in 1647 in La Rochelle. Her parents were André Valade and Sarah Cousseau de La Violette. And just to give you a little history of La Rochelle, just to show you where it is on a new map of France, it's in that Nouvelle-Aquitaine region, and inside that, it's part of the Charente-Maritime section. La Rochelle was founded during the 10th century and became an important harbor in the 12th. Until the 15th century, La Rochelle was to be the largest French harbor on the Atlantic coast, dealing mainly in wine, salt, and cheese. I always say the good stuff. The name was first recorded in 961 as Rufella, from a Latin diminutive meaning little rock. La Rochelle has one of the richest history of all the towns of France, from its beginnings as an area where the Knights of Templar had their strongest base. Eleanor married Henry Plantagen in 1152, who became King of England as Henry II in 1154, thus putting La Rochelle under Plantagenet rule, until Louis VIII captured it in the 1224 siege of La Rochelle. During the Plantagen control of the city in 1185, Henry II had the Vauclair Castle built, remains of which are still visible in the Place de Verdun. From 1568, La Rochelle became a center for the Huguenots. It was in La Rochelle that the Protestant Revolution occurred and created the uprising that would become known as the Siege of La Rochelle. Throughout the 1600s, the Huguenots were expelled from La Rochelle. And Marie Valade was born and baptized a Protestant in the parish of Saint Nicolas at La Rochelle. So she was a Protestant. And so was her father. And so, like I said, this was a very, very tempestuous time. Let's have a look at when she left. Guess what? She got on that very first ship of Les Filles du Roi, le Phoenix de Fléjange, June 30th, 1663. She was definitely wanting a safer place. And in fact, she was joined in the colony. She was about 14 years old, and she was joined in the colony by her brothers Guillaume and Jean. So those of you who have this as your ancestry, you need to examine Guillaume and Jean Valade also. Valade is a very, not that common, but it's a very prominent name in Quebec to this day. So I suspect that line is very strong as well. So let's explore who she ended up marrying. So the fellow she picked and who picked her, his name was Jacques Cadieux, and he was born in 1629, kind of older than her for sure. Prunier-sur-Sounoir, which is now Luché-Prégé. Again, it took me, a few hours to figure this out. His parents were Pierre Cadieux and René Fourreux, and he is from the Pays de la Loire region. And in the département of Sarthe. Jean was presumably baptized at the Église de Notre-Dame de Prunier, which dates from the 12th century. There's no evidence to suggest that he was Protestant. So let's explore. Jean came to New France, and he came in 1653. Those of you who know Quebec history know this is an important year. So yes, he was part of that Grand Recru. That was part of that. He's on that list. I couldn't make it big enough. And we have Marguerite Bourgeois, and we have Paul Chamédie de Maisonneuve. And this is part of the history of Montreal, and he is part of that. He was one of the pioneer members of the Montreal who came in, and he was actually an engagé for 5 years to a gentleman. And after 5 years, then he decided he was going to stay in the New World. I always like to show this map, especially when I'm talking about the early beginnings of Montreal, especially those people that came with the Grand Recru. Look at this island of Montreal. It's just kind of like nowhere land. And so you have to understand that Quebec City and Three Rivers really saw it as nowhere land. So these people that came in that La Grand Recru were truly visionaries, truly people who were, brave enough to try it. And for that, we are eternally grateful. On November 26, 1663, Marie and Jeanne were married. That is so early. Just like one of the earliest marriages. So amazing, amazing. And I remember she's about 14, 15 years of age at this time. He is considerably older. So they do settle in Montreal. Let's talk a little bit about Montreal, this wonderful city that would become the great city that it is. Started off as a very small place called Ville-Marie by the founder, Paul de Chamédie, Sœur de Maisonneuve, and was essentially a missionary center when it was founded in May of 1642. The colony would not thrive, and it was on the verge of extinction when Chamonix decided to return to France to recruit 100 settlers, who would then be known as the Grand Recru, which I just talked about, and that is where Jean comes from. From this small group would evolve the Notre Dame congregation from Sister Marguerite Bourgeois. When Montreal was founded, the new colonists were rapidly confronted by a fearful enemy, the Iroquois. Unfortunately, there was no regular army on the Montreal soil until 1665, when the Carignan-Salieres regiment landed there. In the meantime, militias capable of resisting Iroquois attacks were set up. On January 27, 1663, Chamonix created the Saint Famille militia to protect Ville-Marie and its inhabitants. It was made up of 139 volunteer colonists divided into 20 squads, and yes, Jean was one of them. They would go on to have 10 children together. Marie-Jeanne would die at 16. Pierre married Marguerite Ménard, with whom he had one child, and that child made it to adulthood. And then he married Jeanne Marsan, with whom he had 12 children, all of whom made it. A side note, Jeanne's mother is François Bézinet, who we featured in episode 55. Madeleine died at 26, but did not marry. Marie Geneviève married André Canapal, but they were both murdered by Indians in the Lachine massacre of August 5th, 1689. Jean married Marie Bourdon and had 6 children, 5 of whom made it to adulthood. He became a famous coureur de bois and voyageur. His life and death are the stuff of legend. If you descend from this line, you are fortunate to have such a great history. Marie married Jean Torrien and had 7 children, all of whom made it. Jean's mother was also a fille du roi, Denise Collin, whom we will be featuring in a future episode. Marie-Nicole died at 2. Marguerite was married twice, but did not have any children. She did, however, have a natural child with Jean-Baptiste Le Gardard. The father was a man named Pierre Le Gardard. Jeanne would marry Michel Chartier de La Jeunesse and have 2 children, both of whom reached adulthood. Michel's mother was Madeleine Neal, a fille du roi, who we featured in episode 43. Upon his death, she married André Collet, with whom she had 10 children, 7 of whom made it to adulthood. André's mother was also a fille du roi, Jacqueline Labbé, who we featured in episode 91. Catherine would marry Robert Foch and have 7 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Robert's mother was also a fille du roi. Her name was Catherine Churet, and we'll be featuring her in a future episode. Isn't that amazing how they all kind of interconnected? So Jean would pass away on the 30th of September, 1681. He was older than her, but he was actually only about 52 years old. So that was an early, early death. He and Marie would have been married 18 years. So although I always say one man dies, another arrives, in 1681 she was alone as enlisted in the 1681 census as a widow with her children. Pierre, 15, Madeleine, 14, Geneviève, 11, Jean, 10, Marguerite, 6, Jeanne, 2, Catherine, 1 year of age. 2 goats and 8 arpents à Valade. So she had about probably 5 to 6 acres of land. So the new bridegroom was Philippe Boudier, and he was born in 1642 in St. Cloud, France. His parents were Mathieu Boudier and Marianne Priard. St. Cloud is a commune. Remember, a commune is a township, and it's located in the western suburbs of Paris. That little tiny section, Ile-de-France, in the middle there is Paris. And part of where he's from is in Hauts-de-Seine, and that's where St. Cloud is found. St. Cloud is one of France's now, today, wealthiest towns with a population of about 30,000. The town is actually named after Clodald, who was the grandson of Clovis. A park containing the ruins of the Château de St. Cloud, built in 1572 and destroyed by fire in 1870. I pointed that out. That picture on the bottom is just amazing. The Château de St. Cloud was a royal and imperial palace occupied by Marie Antoinette and Napoleon, but was leveled during the Franco-Prussian War. Its gardens are glorious and have the Jardin Remarquable label awarded by the Ministry of Culture. Lines of cone-shaped trees amid all of the different grounds show where the palace used to be. While the gardens are still landscaped the way they would have been done and how Marie Antoinette would have seen it. Henri II was assassinated here. Who knew? This town is also famous for the St. Cloud porcelain produced here from 1693 to 1763. The church where Philip might have been baptized was the Saint Clotilde Church, which dates from the 10th to the 11th century. However, it was rebuilt in the 18th century as it was obviously beginning to self-destruct. So that's who her next husband is. So Marie and Philippe were married February 9th, 1682 in Montreal, and at the same cathedral that she would have married her first husband, Jean. So the family grew again. We have Philippe, who would die at 16, but then we have François, who married Marie-Jeanne Messeret and had 2 children to adulthood. Françoise married François Etier and had 7 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Marie Valade died January 9th, 1719. She was 72 years old, and by then she had been married 37 years with Philippe. Now, Philippe Boudier himself would die January 24th, 1726. He was 84 years of age. They are both buried in Montreal. Here are some resources I'd love to recommend. Number 1, La Société des Filles du Roi. It's a wonderful lineage society that has been in existence since 1994. And then we have, check it out. It's got amazing resources as well for you to check. Even if you're not a member, you can go on there and explore and check it out. Number 2, Quebec Genealogical Society is another great website and a great genealogy kind of resource. I'm a member, so absolutely. And by the way, I'm a member of La Société des Filles du Roi. I'm the membership chair. I forgot to say that. Number 3, Mes Origines, Nos Origines. Is a wonderful group kind of think tank. And we have number 4, Généalogie Québec, which to me is the Ancestry.com of Quebec. Love it. Couldn't do my job without it. Number 5 is Migration. And number 6, Migration, is everything you ever wanted to know about Les Filles du Roi. It is a free site, but I donate by PayPal just because I like it so much. and I really want to encourage them. And then we have Facebook, which is a Fille du Roi descendant. There's lots and lots of different, Facebook groups. So this one I really like. I think they're kind, and I think they're very generous of spirit. So I would encourage you to have a look at that and see other people who are also of like mind. Marie Marguerite's Valade's life was truly one, escaping from really probably persecution in her homeland and then moving to New France. There is no evidence that she converted to Catholicism, so I remember once I actually had a fellow who had to convert, and I had that. So somewhere along the line, she needed to convert to Catholicism, or was it just not? I don't know. I don't have enough information about that. If anyone out there does, I would appreciate being educated on that, because I couldn't find any kind of, union or baptism record for her. That doesn't mean she didn't have it. But by 1729, when they did the famous survey, between her two husbands, she had 142 descendants. So not only did she survive and thrive and have strong relationships, her descendancy is assured. And obviously, I thank my viewers so much, because this was a really good story. And I enjoyed researching her and researching her two husbands. So with that, I will lead you and bid you adieu until I see you on episode 119. Until then, au revoir.